Cool. All right, we'll get started if everyone's ready. Okay, welcome to Maximizing Your Research and Identity and Impact. It showed up on the website right there. I'm Taira Meadowcroft. I'm from the Health Sciences line. This is Janice Dysart. She works here at Ellis. So if you guys have any questions afterward, our contact information is on the back of that handout. It's also written right here on this whiteboard. And then for anyone who's online, we can give you the handout later. We forgot to send it out. So what we're doing today is going to give you ways to help with author ambiguity. So when you write papers, you think, I'm the only one with my name, and unfortunately, that's not the issue. Sometimes there's a lot of people out there who have the same name as you. Author names get mixed up because you have last name and first initial. So what there's a way to do are these author profiles you can sign up for, and the ones we're going to talk about today are ORCID, Scopus ID, Researcher ID, Google Scholar. Those are the four that we'll talk about today, and kind of give you a little bit of background about them and how to sign up if you haven't already. And I'm going to say if you have any questions, feel free to ask them, or if you want to wait until the end, that's fine too. Okay, so what we're going to start with is ORCID. Has anyone heard of ORCID at all? Okay, have you signed up for ORCID? Okay, so ORCID, as you can see on the screen, is a research ID that anyone can sign up for. It's unique to yourself. While other people may have the same name as you, you'll have your own researcher ID. And it goes with you from institution to institution. So you have access to this throughout your entire career. You can keep it up in any way you want. It's really easy to sign up. As we can see, sign up here. I'm going to give you a little bit of more information about ORCID. It's nonprofit and supported by different foundations, MIT, University of Barcelona, Cornell. It's also a lot of grants funding organizations require you to have unique identifiers now, and one of them would be ORCID. So it'd be a good idea to sign up for it. Does anyone have any questions before I show you how to sign up for ORCID? Okay. So it's really simple to do. You can go to sign in, go to register now, down at the bottom, and you can sign in. You'll sign in with your university email for now, or whatever email I guess you want. I have it set up to my university email. So I'll give you guys a few minutes to do that, and then, or sign in if you already have it, and then we can go through the profile itself. And then when everyone signs up, here's ORCID Live. So this is real-time drops. These little droplets will show up when anyone signs up for ORCID. So Gonzalo Laparca from Chile, I think, just signed up. And then you can scroll over everyone's if you were interested. But that's a little cool thing that you can see. I wonder if we'll see anyone else's pull up in the United States. Can I zoom in? I can zoom in. Oh, I'm in Kansas.
I was going to say you wanted to
I was confused. I'm not originally from Missouri, so I don't know the surrounding states very well. Also, a good thing about ORCID is that it connects to your other profiles, so it'll connect to Scopus, LinkedIn. For faculty, we have MyVita. You can put it in there just placeholder so people know where your profile is. You might have to confirm it in your email too, but okay, I'm going to sign in really quick. Still waiting for them to pop up. I think it'd be so cool to see. One thing, I'm not sure if they changed it. We're currently trying to figure it out. At one point, ORCID used to, when you signed up, your profile wasn't automatically public, and so you would have to go in and make sure it was public. What is public in the profile is just the information here. So we'll look at the public version of mine. Education, employment, and works, any grant funding. This is all that shows up here as well. So it's not going to be any personal information you had to put in when you signed up for the account. And then here is the link, the direct link to the profile. This would just be your ORCID ID. So you'll have this for as long as you want it. And like I said, it goes with you anywhere. You can go in and change the email address at any time. You can change your affiliation at any time. This is totally yours with what you wish. And like I said earlier, ORCID will link to certain accounts. You can put in the IDs without linking them, but if you have a Scopus ID, which we'll talk about next, you can link it up. So that way right here, I can go to my Researcher ID just by clicking on it. Anyone else can. The same with the Scopus ID. And then as well, I put in my Google Scholar profile, so this is nice to have. No, I'm back. I refreshed it. There we go. Keeps on doing that. Oh, no. I don't know why it's doing that.
Just leave it on the big,
Yeah.
big picture.
Stay. Oh, it's moving with the map. That's why it's happening. I get it now. All right. So it'll be sorted right there. Another good thing about ORCID is that when you do link to other researcher IDs that are created for you, for instance, Scopus, that also helps with author ambiguity because they talk to each other. The same with Researcher ID with Web of Science. So it gives them a little bit more information. And then once it gets through their system, they'll be able to link to your ORCID profile from Web of Science and Scopus. All right. Has everyone created their profile? Are we good? Not sure why none of that's showing up, but so this is the public view. This is a Sergey, I can't pronounce his name.
Kopekin. It's a physics astronomer profile.
Yes, so he has a little bit bigger profile than I do, but you can see all of his profiles, all of his works back from before probably he was even at MU are all in here.
Yes. You go to public view?
So this is just what everyone else is going to see, the public view. So if you're in your own, you can see your public version, but we're just looking at what you would see if you were searching or if someone else was searching you, just all the stuff that they would be able to see. You can make, so what's nice about this, if you really wanted to, you can make some of these boxes private if you wanted to. If you don't have any information, like I don't, there's no funding information right here, so it won't be left blank. And then, yeah, just pretty much can beef it up. But if you want to link to it on your CV, that's a good idea. Just this is yours. So, does anyone have any questions about ORCID? Do you guys know have you figured out how to add in works at all? It's relatively simple. Just go add education, add employment, add works. You can import RIS formats, which are like if you have an EndNote library or some kind of other citation manager, you can do that as well. All right. Before we move on, does anyone have any questions? All right. Oh.
One quick question. So my Orchid ID, I timed it for a while back. The last digit is an X.
Oh. Interesting.
Is numeric.
I don't think I've ever seen that before.
Okay.
And but it works.
It works.
Okay.
It works.
I mean, could look into that. Maybe it's just every day there's more and more people, so maybe by the time you did it, they were using X's. I don't know. We'll look it up. Yeah, that's interesting. All right, so no more questions about ORCID. We'll go on to Scopus.
Okay, just to backtrack just a little bit, we do have a guide for this workshop. So any sites we talk about, the links will be in the guide. And to find and I'll send out a link to the guide after class, but to find it on our library page, just go down to course guides. And then it's just should be under M for maximizing. There it is. And as you can see, ORCID's up here that we just talked about. And now we're going to go into the Scopus author profile. Now, are people familiar with what Scopus is? Has anybody used Scopus? Scopus is it's a large database. It's what you use to find primarily articles, but also has conference proceedings, a few book chapters in it. So it's a big commercial database that's used by a lot of people to find the most current journal articles on their topic, or actually the database goes back to 1970 now, so you can find older material too. And to get to Scopus, you just go to databases and type in the word Scopus. Now Scopus it's produced by a company called Elsevier, which some of you may have heard of because Elsevier is a big publisher of journals, particularly science journals, but also social science journals and scholarly books. So you may have heard of them. And it's just Scopus, S-C-O-P-U-S. And let's adjust that just a little bit. I'm just going to do an author search. So you pick up an author, and well, we'll do a person on campus, Heidi April. So I think she's getting ready to leave for another job, but at another location. But when you do an author search in Scopus, and Scopus indexes about 22,000 journals in the sciences and social sciences and some in the humanities. So once you have 2 articles listed in Scopus, they create an author profile for you. And if I want to see the author profile for Heidi, I just click on this link over here on the left. If all I wanted to do is see what article she's written, I could click on this 40 over here in the middle. But I want to see her profile, so we'll go over here on the left. And you can see it tells you all sorts of things. So it says, how many articles she's written. Her articles have been cited over 2,000 times by about over 1,700 different documents. She's written with 83 different people. Over here on the right, there's a little chart that kind of indicates her publishing history through the years. They list affiliations and so forth. And the nice thing about Scopus is it pulls all this information together. And you can see over here on the right that they have noticed that she uses some different versions of her name, and so they pulled those together. And so they've done a lot of work, which is nice. Her articles that she's written that are in Scopus are down here below. And notice over here on the right, there's an add to ORCID link. So if she wanted to update her ORCID account, she could come into Scopus and just click on this little link here and easily send her references to her ORCID ID if she's got one. This author ID is strictly for Scopus over here on the left under her name. That's a Scopus number, so don't confuse that with the ORCID ID. That's different. Yes.
Out of curiosity, I pulled up mine, and it says two of my subject areas are nursing and psychology, which I have no relation to whatsoever.
They do have. They have been known to mess up because they're doing this, they're pulling what information they have. And over here on the right, there's a request author detail corrections, which you can click on and make some corrections. I think this basically, I haven't used it for a little while, but I think it might take you to corrections for the actual articles. Because you can look through, you might want to look through the list of articles and see if all the articles they have attributed to you are actually yours. Because if not, you use this link on the right to get rid of the ones that are not yours.
There's only one, so we're good.
Okay. So you only have one article?
Yep.
Because normally they don't give you an author profile unless you have 2 articles. So. But what I can do after class is we can send them an email that says, this information's wrong, and they'll correct it. So remind me right after class, and I'll do that. So that brings up what you really have to do with Scopus. It's automatically generated, but maybe, you know, when you start publishing articles, then once or twice a year, if you're at an institution that subscribes to Scopus, you should check your profile and just make sure they've got everything right. Now, certainly, if you have your ORCID ID, since you've applied for that and you have it, that should help Scopus keep everything straight. Because up until a few years ago, they didn't have ORCID IDs, and they were totally working through author affiliations from articles, and they do a great job, but they do make some mistakes. But they are quite willing to correct their mistakes. So that's not. Now, one piece of information that's on this author profile is H-index. Has anybody heard of the H-index? And the person who said yes, what is it? What is it telling you?
It's a metric, so it tells you how many articles you have had cited that number of times. So someone with an H-index of 30 would have 30 publications that have been cited at least.
Right, that's perfect. So that's what this Heidi has an H-index of 21, which means she's written 21 articles that have been cited 21 or more times. Now, you notice she's written more articles than 21, so she's got, 19 articles that have not been cited. There would have to, another one of her articles would have to have been cited 22 times for her H-index to rise to 22. So it's where the number of articles she's written, equals the number of times they've all been cited, or minimum number of times they've all been cited. It's a metric that was developed by a physicist out of Spain, and he wanted a way to, he wanted a numerical value that incorporated not only the number of times an article was cited, but the number of articles the person was writing. So in order to know whether 21 is good, is that a good number for Heidi? The only way to know if it's really a good number is to look at some other researchers in a similar field that have been in the field about the same amount of time she has. Because if you're new to a field, your H-index can never be higher than the number of articles you've written. So if you're new to research and like you've only written one article, your H-index can only be 1. It could be cited, 50, 100 times, but your H-index is only 1 because you only have one article. So you can't compare yourself starting out with people who've been in the researching and published for years. So it's all relative. So it's just a gauge where you can, as you get on in research and you've published some, you can kind of compare yourself to some other people. You'll be familiar with names when you start going to conferences and things like that. And you can just look them up on Scopus and see what their H-index and just see how you compare. Now, another interesting thing that Scopus does, I'm going down into Heidi's articles. And we're going to look at this article here. Plants respond to leaf vibrations caused by insect herbivore chewing. And I'm going to click on the title to go to the full display for the article. And you'll notice it's been cited 23 times since it was published a few years ago. But if I go further down on the right-hand side, you're going to see this box that says metrics. And what this box is showing you is, well, one metric is how often an article has been cited. And that's kind of the traditional metric that's been around a long time. But in the past few years, more and more different metrics are coming out that are being developed to help you determine maybe the impact or the value of an article. And these are called Altmetrics, Altmetrics. And these are things like social networking mentions or mentions in the media, And if you look at this chart, you can see this article's been mentioned a lot of times in blogs. It's been tweeted over 152 times. It's in Facebook. What I find interesting is down here they'll talk about mentions in mass media, which to me is interesting. And you can look in more detail at the stuff. Like you can see this particular article that she wrote has really taken off, and it was covered, as you can see, it was covered by at least 39 newspapers and other media outlets. And you can actually go through and read these if you want to. So you can sort of see how reporters are translating her research into words that the general public can understand. And this is basically something sort of to be aware of. There's certainly, it has not been established yet how useful this information is. I mean, I think it's interesting if you're writing articles, it's interesting to kind of monitor this stuff so you can sort of see what's happening to your article right after it's published, because it takes a long time for somebody to read your article and cite it and get their article cited. I mean, their article published, so you can then see that your article is cited. That can take a long time. But this kind of stuff can show up immediately. And Scopus is displaying this information from a company called Altmetrics.com. But there are other companies that do this same thing, and I'll show you one other real quickly. We're just going to take this article title, I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to go back to the Orchid here. I'm going to go back to the main library page here. And we have a big search engine called Discover@MU. That's our Google-like search engine for library resources. And I'm just going to plug the title into Discover@MU, this little box here. And I'm going to search on it. And wait a second. And notice this colorful graphic popped up. This is a graphic from another company that collects the same kind of information as Altmetrics.com does in Scopus. And this company is called PlumX. And if I highlight this little image, you can see they're also monitoring all sorts of things like blog mentions, tweets, all sorts of stuff. And notice the little graphic, since she's had a lot of action on her articles, this little graphic is pretty big and colorful. Like the article right below her, it's only had a few mentions in the social media or mass media so far, so it's not quite as prominent. So this is just another way to see it, and you can sort of see, you know, the numbers are not going to add up because these are two different companies. They're monitoring some of the same things, but not all of the same things. So they're a little different. And they're actually commercial companies, and if they get a lot of money, we could subscribe to one of these companies and get a lot more information from them. You could have your own little dashboard of one of these companies, and you could really quickly, easily monitor all of your articles. But at this point in time, the university doesn't have money for that. But we can, you know, have access to the data through Scopus, through Discover@MU. And one other alternative is more and more publishers now are starting to incorporate this information on their websites. So when you start publishing journal articles, you'll want to check that out and see if your publisher is doing that kind of thing. And I'll just show you an example of one so you can kind of see what to look for. One open access journal. Yes. Okay.
One more time how you got the Altmetrics on Scopus.
Okay. On Scopus, you go into Scopus, and I should mention on Scopus that this Altmetric box only displays if there's information to display. I mean, there are certainly quite a few articles in Scopus where there are no social mentions. There hasn't been any mention in the news media. They do not have a metrics box on their screen. So if you're looking like at your own stuff and you're not finding anything, that could be why. And certainly older articles will not really have stuff because it's a fairly recent thing. But all I did was go from the results screen. If you're doing an author search or topic search and you have a results screen, you just need to go to the full display of the article. And we can try a different one just to see. And you have to give it a second to display. And so here she does have a little bit of metric stuff going on for this article, but you can see it's not nearly as much as the article from a few years ago. So it's in the full display to the right of the abstract. But as I said, it only displays if there's information to see. Okay, let's go to this this publisher +1 or +1. I'm not quite sure how people pronounce that name. It's a big science journal, but there are other journals. I'm just going to go to most viewed articles just to pull something up. And let's see. Well, let's look at this first one. This is on racial bias in police shootings. That's pretty timely right now. So we can see why it's one of the most viewed articles. And if I click on this publisher, +1, has a box called metrics. And that's what a lot of the publishers are doing. They're adding, you know, to the full display of the article, they're adding metrics information, and they'll usually label it metrics. So I can click on this. And you can see what kind of metrics this publisher is recording, and it's mainly looking at article views. So this particular article has been viewed, you know, almost 650,000 times, which is a huge amount of times. So if I was this person, you know, going up for promotion or tenure, I would probably point that out on my documentation, saying, you know, I wrote this article, and, you know, how many times it's been cited. And it may, right now it only says 1 citation, but that's just from within the +1 is really what this is. But it, you know, it's kind of impressive that this article has been viewed by this many people. You'll note that the actual PDF downloads, which probably indicates more serious researchers looking at it, you know, maybe downloading it to EndNote or one of their bibliographic management systems, is closer to 7,000. So that's a much smaller number of probably researchers that are seriously looking at the article to further their research. But it's just more information about, you know, it's an indication of impact or what you're doing. As far as, you know, increasing your impact, I mean, there have been studies coming out that are indicating that doing social media, tweeting about your articles, things like that, does seem to have a little bit of an effect of increasing the number of sites. Another thing that could possibly increase the number of sites is if you publish in open access journals or open access articles. This is a particular, +1 is an open access journal. Some commercial journals, subscription journals, do allow you to publish open access. You normally have to pay a fee. And in the journal, it just depends on the fee. But this makes the article freely available to everyone. They don't have to have a subscription. And so making the article more accessible could lead to more citations. They haven't established that for sure yet. They're still doing research on that. But that's just something. Any questions on Altmetrics? It's just kind of a new area, and just basically be aware of it. If you publish anything, it's kind of fun to monitor, see what's happening. It remains to be seen whether Altmetrics is going to play a big role in the future in promotion and tenure or hiring or things like that. Okay, well, next let Taira talk about Google Scholar Profile.
Okay, so does anyone have a Google Scholar Profile? Have you signed up for it? That seems to be a lot more well known. Just like ORCID, you sign up for it, it's yours, it goes along with you. And like Scopus has metrics or evaluation tools, Google Scholar does as well. Oh no.
That's weird.
There we go. I'm gonna search. I wonder if Heidi Apple has one. Do you think? I'm just gonna do the same one.
I bet she does.
She does. So Google Scholar profiles will only show up in searches if you make it public. So make sure you do that. It'll only be made public if it has a verified institutional email address. So if you're going to sign up for one, I would sign up for one here. Or I can't remember if you should sign up with your own email, but then still verify it with your institutional email. I'll figure that out. But either way, it has to be verified for your institution. So here's Heidi Apple's. We saw hers in Scopus. Right here would be the metrics that they provide. You can see the co-authors. These citations, like Janice said, the metrics are going to be different depending on the platform because they're looking at different things. Her H index is bigger in Google Scholar because it indexes more journals and works. They also have something called the I-10 index, which, let's get this right, is the number of publications with 10 or more citations in the last 5 years. So that has more chance of getting higher up than the other ones because you only need 10 or more.
So I can't say that particular metric has caught on.
No.
I have never seen it mentioned anywhere
hasn't,
except
yeah.
in the Google Scholar profile. So,
but it's still nice. But yeah, H index for sure. But hers is higher in Google Scholar. And then they base it off of the last 5 years too over here. And so, does anyone not signed up for Google Scholar?
I'm signing up right now.
Okay. So,
now, one nice thing about Google Scholar is it should basically automatically add items to your account or your profile as they're discovered, on Google Scholar. Though, again, you have to monitor that a little bit because Google Scholar can certainly make mistakes like Scopus can make mistakes.
and you can manually add in things as well. We can't see that because I'm not Heidi Apple, but if anyone's interested, it's relatively easy to do.
It's associated my name with a couple hundred articles myself with the same name.
Yeah, it will do that. Good question. Let me just be able to sign up into mine. Okay, so now I'm just confused in how I found myself earlier today. Cool. There we go. Found it. So if you're signed in with whatever email you've done, you can still verify it with your university email. Make sure you have an opportunity to put in your picture, which would be good. Helps distinguish you from other people who might have the same name as you. You can go into your profile. For the ones that aren't yours, you just click on them and delete. It doesn't mean that Google won't try to add them again, but that's what you just have to keep on making sure that you pay attention to all the, if you have all these profiles, make sure you pay attention to them if you want them to be used to showcase your works and your scholarly impact.
It said it removed them, they're still all here.
It may take some time, but
I think that did it.
okay. And then just as easily as you can delete ones that aren't yours, you can not do that. Add them right here.
Google Scholar is used by a lot of people around the world.
It
It's
is.
free, you know, you can certainly find a lot of stuff on it. So it is good to have a Google Scholar profile because it does raise your visibility.
Exactly. And it's, yeah, you can give people the links to your profile, like ORCID, all manual for the most part. Like Janice said, Google's going to put whatever it is in there it wants, whether it's you or not, but make sure you pay attention to who's in there and if you're in there.
And hopefully over time, you know, in a few years, Google Scholar will probably be paying a lot more attention to the ORCID ID, and they'll be tying into that more. So there'll be less and less of you getting, you know, incorrect articles into your listing that you have to pull out.
Mm-hmm. And then, even though my email address is showing up here because I'm signed in, this is all the email address you'll see on the public profile. So it's not like everyone has access to your email if you're worried about that. So it's public, but it keeps things private as well. So does anyone have any questions about Google Scholar? All right, we'll go on to the next one then.
I'll just briefly talk about the next one because, well, it's called Researcher ID, and it is the author profile system that's used by Web of Science. Has anybody heard of Web of Science? Some of you have. Okay. Web of Science is another big database. It's a competitor to Scopus. So they're big databases. They cover thousands of journals. So Web of Science covers about 13,000 journals versus more. Scopus has about 25,000. With Web of Science, they unfortunately, at least to me it's unfortunate, they make you create your own author profile for that database. They don't create one like Scopus does. They want you to go into this Researcher ID. If you just type Researcher ID into Google, it'll pop up, and you can set up an account, and you can easily add articles from Web of Science into it, but you have to maintain your account. They're just not automatically added in after you set up your account. So it's a lot of work. So I have to say, I don't think, my impression is most people either don't have a Researcher ID account at all, or they make one up and then they never go back and update it. So I can't say it's particularly useful at this point in time. So since your time is limited, for the moment, I would just, you know, get a Google Scholar account for sure, have your ORCID ID for sure, and then check Scopus once or twice a year, depending on how much you publish, to make sure their profiles are accurate for you. Yes?
One question. I have two accounts on ResearchGate and Google Scholar. In Google Scholar, I have 16 citations. In ResearchGate, I have 9 citations. In this case, how can I add those citations in the Google Scholar, the ResearchGate, or ResearchGate?
You mean how to add from Google Scholar to ResearchGate?
I think I know how can I add this citation by the Google Scholar, but I asked about the ResearchGate. How can I add those citations? Because I have a lot of 16 citations.
Right. I mean, I'm not that familiar with ResearchGate. I thought you could just add them yourself.
You should be able to, because it's more, ResearchGate is more like a LinkedIn. It has very
social media aspect sharing. And so you can, I'm pretty sure, add it in itself, but it's not indexing stuff automatically. I think you have to add it. It's not like Google Scholar where it's going to put it in for you. So I think that's where it is, unless you have the same publications in both and those citations are off. It could just be, I'm not entirely sure, but we can look into that for you. But we don't know entirely too much about ResearchGate because no one knows what the purpose of ResearchGate is, but everyone uses it. So, but we can look into that.
All right. Thanks so much.
Okay, so we have eight minutes. We can go a little bit over. Okay, we started later, but so Janice talked about open access and how making your articles open access or freely available could potentially up citations. Definitely just usage, like those metrics, who gets to see it and stuff. And then depending on the specific grant funding organizations, you have to share the information in different repositories. And we have one here at the university called MOspace. So it's our institutional repository. If you can search this as well, so you have to actually upload your stuff into here, but what's in here are things like dissertations, data sets could be in here, articles, just thesis, all kinds of things that are from people from the University of Missouri. So that's all 4 campuses as well. A good thing about MOspace is that if you do upload the information in there, you'll have a permanent URL. So the one thing that was on my Google Scholar profile was something I did in grad school a few years ago. It wasn't published. It was a paper that I did for class, and me and my fellow students put it in MOspace. So because it's in here, I could link to it in my Google Scholar. So if there is, it's kind of, you have to pay attention to when you're publishing what sort of contract you sign, because some things you can put up before it's published, some things you can't, so you have to make sure that the copyright clearance is okay. You can have a Creative Commons clearance. It's just pay attention to that, so you can't just upload anything here. But it's not automatic upload. You can go to Submit Works. It gives you some information. You email or submit online here, and they will make sure that you have all the, well, we'll look in here. And they'll, okay. So they'll ask you the different questions you need to submit to get this, and then just general information for submitting works. I'll go back to MOspace now. So if you had any questions about submitting, here you go. But yeah, it's all discoverable to other people as well. You can search in here. We're going to do, well, we'll go to the front.
But probably most importantly, it's crawled by Google.
Yes.
So people
That
can
too.
discover it. Like if you could add a poster there from a presentation you did at a conference or something, and it'll show up on Google, and then people might possibly link to it. And Taira can show you that this records statistics, usage statistics. So
Yeah.
it's another way to sort of be able to measure a little bit of the impact of your research.
So these are just site statistics. Which one in here has been viewed the most? And then you can search if you have something on here, you can search for that and do, let's see, well, maybe that one hasn't been seen. But yeah, you can look for yours and then look at the different usage statistics there. It's mostly, I think it's views, obviously, but I don't know about downloads and stuff myself.
Yeah,
But
they just recently changed their I think the software for analyzing usage, so it's changed a little bit. But I think it has a link that says metrics.
yeah, so if you find one that's been looked at, that probably will show up. But it's nice if you're searching on your own to see if there is information for your certain topic in here, see what other people at the university, if they have put stuff up there. It's by community, and then you can browse, see recently added, stuff like that. So it's just good because places like the NIH, National Institute of Health, require that you share your information in the institutional repository, and other grant-funded organizations, it depends on what they want, but this could be an option for you. And permanent URL, you have access to it just because you work here or go to school here. Another, going off of that, or do you have any questions before I go? So if another place you can use is Fixshare. So much like MOspace, you can share or upload data sets here. It's a free repository. It's not linked to an institution, so the only bad thing I guess about MOspace is that you leave, it's linked to the institution. Here, this goes with you as well. MOspace still has the direct URL, but I'm not sure if you can look at the usage if you are not part of the university anymore. A drawback is that it may not remain free, but right now it is, and it's really easy to sign up. I did it this morning. Sign up, and then you would just hit the upload button, and once you sign in, really easy to use. But once again, make sure you know what you're uploading and the copyright for it, because you could be violating copyright. A cool thing though about Fixshare is that you can browse by these featured categories. There's other categories here you can search to see who else has been putting stuff up in Fixshare that pertains to you. You can also see popular ones, so those would be the most viewed on Fixshare if it ever loaded. So here they have an article or a hypothesis, and see the views and the downloads. So there, but you have to log in to get it, but it's free for now. So does anyone have any questions about that? Did you want me to go through? I didn't think we needed a basic search. If you do need help with searching, if you go to this help button, it gives you all the ways that you can search in there if you're looking for information. And then they give you the FAQs, more articles about copyright and licensing. How do I share my data? How do I publish it? So it's pretty good if you have any questions with that. And then going off of open access and certain articles or certain journals, one you can look at is Romeo Sherpa, or Sherpa Romeo. So you can search journal titles in here to see the types of copyright clearance and self-archiving they have. So I'm going to type in Strand. And so they're going to give you a detailed overview of Strand. It's a yellow journal, which down here you can see the type of archiving policy. So you can archive the preprint, peer reviewing. So you could put the preprint before it got to the people up on something like MOspace or Fixshare. You cannot publish, you cannot archive the publisher's version, because if you do, you are violating copyright. You can see more information about the publisher, stuff like that. And then you can pay to have an open access. So that's the thing, if you're trying to decide where to publish and what you can share apart from the published article, this is a good resource. And then, really quick, there is a Sherpa Juliet, Romeo and Juliet. And this just shows you, you can go by funder name or country name. So to see their open access policy, so the National Institute of Health requires open access, like whether to archive, what to archive, stuff like that. So to make sure to know what information you have to share or what information you cannot share. So does anyone have any questions about Romeo Sherpa and Romeo, or Sherpa Romeo and Sherpa Juliet? These are just good resources to pay attention to, because open access is good. I'm going to put that plug out there. So, okay, does anyone have any questions about the overall, anything that we've discussed today that have come up or you didn't get a chance to answer or ask earlier? Okay.
If anybody else wants to stay a few minutes, we can talk about impact factors. People are unfamiliar with journal impact factors. Does that ring a bell with people? It's how journals are being ranked, and like it's how you can see the top journals in a particular area. If you go to a journal website, I know a lot of people in education were in here today, so I looked up an education journal called Learning and Instruction. I'm just Googling the title. And if you go to the publisher site, you'll often see this impact factor, and there'll be a number. And you might go, well, what does this mean? And you go, oh, there's a 5-year impact factor, which is a little higher. And what this is, an impact factor is basically, there's computation involved, but basically it's saying that the impact factor for the current year, well, in this case 2015, it's always going to be a year behind. It's saying that if you publish an article in this particular journal, it's cited on the average 3.692 times. So it's just kind of the gauge of how often an article is cited in this journal. Now, that doesn't mean all articles cited in this journal or published in this journal are cited that many times. Some may be cited not at all, some are cited much more, but this is the average. But of course, by itself, this doesn't mean a whole lot. What you want to do is see how this journal how it ranks with the other journals in education. And to see that, we have, let's just get this, whoops. We have a tool you can use available from our website, which is called Journal Citation Reports. And you probably won't remember that title, but if you go to How Do I Find, and you look for impact factors, if you just click on that, it's going to tell you to use available from Journal Citation Reports. And I will just search for this journal, my title, and here it is. Not all journals have impact factors. Impact factors are computed by the same company that developed Web of Science. So the journal has to be indexed by a certain portion of Web of Science called Web of Science Core. And that's about 13,000 journals. So not all journals have impact factors, and that doesn't mean they're bad journals, but it just means they haven't met the standards of Web of Science to earn an impact factor. And you can see this particular journal, you can see here's the most recent impact factor, and you can see through the years, like it used to be less than 1 back in 2002. So this journal is being cited more and more through the years. But what you can also see from this page, you can see the subject categories for this journal. And there are 2, education and educational research, and there's also a psychology subheading. And if I want to see all the journals in these categories, I can click on these links here, or I can come down here to the bottom of the page where it says rank. And if I click on rank, it pulls up this little chart, and it will tell me that this journal, with its impact factor, what was it, around 3, is number 4 out of 231 journals in education and educational research. So it's a very good education journal. And it's number 3 out of 57 educational psychology journals. So it's also a good journal in educational psychology. But if you want to go, I want to see all the journals in those categories, then come back up here, and we'll just look at one category at a time. This will give you the listing of all the 231 education journals, and they're ranked by impact factors. So you can see the top journal in this subject area has an impact factor around a little over 5, 5.5. And it will drop down as you go down. But really any journal that has an impact factor would be a pretty good journal to cite in, because as I said, they have to meet certain qualifications that Web of Science has set, which are things like, are they reviewed, are they peer reviewed, do they come out on a regular basis? I think they have to have an online edition now. I mean, they just have to meet certain standards. And being published on a regular basis, is some journals have difficulty with that, coming out, all the time. Yes?
The website, and insights and all that give a different number for that off ResearchGate, which is generally speaking considered more reliable of the 2.
Well, what numbers are you talking about on ResearchGate?
Because ResearchGate will give an impact factor information as well.
Okay. I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, the impact factor information is supposedly owned by Web of Science, so I don't know if they're getting their information from Web of Science or not, or if they're creating their own evaluation.
So impact factor, is owned by this company. It's measuring its impact, but there are other metrics too. Sometimes when we get, at the Health Sciences Library, we get a list of articles for people who are coming up for promotion and tenure, and we have to gather these metrics. Sometimes we'll go with the, I think it's Shimago, the SJR score, which is measuring impact in a different way, and that is, I believe, Scopus.
Yes, it is. Scopus has some rankings.
Yeah, so I mean,
too.
Like that, ResearchGate could be measuring impact in a different way, but it's kind of, I mean, you can't necessarily compare them because they measure in a different way, but yeah, we'll say that. But like I said, we don't know much about ResearchGate because
they're kind of, I guess they really, well, copyright issue is a big problem with ResearchGate, so we can't, I admit we can't really promote it, but we know a lot of people use it, and you can certainly get a lot of valuable information from it. But the impact, if you want to make sure you're getting the impact factor that most people are talking about, journal impact factors, you want to look at the journal website or journal citation reports to make sure you're getting the most current impact factor for that journal.
Not to say ResearchGate is bad for a profile, because obviously people use it, but just the part where people can upload articles that they don't have copyright to anymore is not necessarily good. But
it happens.
It happens a lot. So, does anyone have any questions? Well, if you don't, and you find that you have questions later or you need a refresher, our contact information is on the back, and we'll be happy to answer any questions at any time. Awesome. Well,
And thanks for coming.
yeah.
And I'll send out a link to the guide to everybody.